if you're any bit familiar with modern popular culture, you would understand the term of a savage as being something that a lot of people want to attach to themselves for glory, as being a gangster almost. And we see it all the time with rappers, 21 Savage, and especially I'm a big drill fan, and a lot of the rappers use this name, use this title as a sort of way to dress up themselves, right? Now, while that is the case for today, not too long ago, the term savage was also used as an insult. Well, mostly. Because since people back then were a lot more complicated, sort of unlike how we're very complicated today, there was also at the same time a sort of appreciation for certain types of savages or a certain state or type of savagery. And so that's what I'm going to look into today, and that's what I'm going to take you guys through. I'm gonna show you guys me doing a front flip. I learned these like 3 days ago. That was dangerous, I almost slipped. In order to understand this, I'm going to have to take you through a sort of hypothetical history that was put forth by the earlier writers about this noble savage myth. And so in this first state of nature, or this first state of our proto-history, we have the state of nature. And basically this is a state when humans are walking around, roaming around, sort of isolated and motivated by their most basic needs. And in this sort of state of nature, in this sort of stage of our existence, there's no real type of inequality, which is a very important thing that you're gonna have to keep in mind for as we move on to hypothetical history. Then, another aspect of this that we really need to talk about, now that I'm out here in the nature, in the place where probably not more than a few hundred years ago, you would have had Native American tribes out here. So essentially, to the best of my understanding, is humans in their most natural state are naturally moral beings, naturally moral creatures, motivated primarily by the desire for food, sex, and play. And these are the main things that sort of rule humans' actions before the infamous introduction of Amour-propre. Interesting idea, Rousseau. These trees look really cool. In this stage, humans sort of gain mastery over nature. We learn things like fire, tools, and bones, and etc. And our lives are pretty simple. But with our technological developments, this sort of leads us to the next state of nature, which is called the Golden Age. And in this age, we start to have more large-scale collaborative projects. This is when we have the introduction of things like agriculture, metallurgy, and we simply start to live as more advanced creatures, if that makes sense. And there's also one thing that is introduced, which is Amour-propre, which is basically the sort of motivation for and desire for status and glory. This sort of invention or this introduction of Amour-propre, the desire for others to see you in a high manner, is very different to what we had, is a very different thing to what we had in the first state of nature, which was just the desire for our sort of immediate needs as like human physical beings, right? And this right here, when we have the introduction of Amour-propre, is the beginning of the end, almost, so to speak, in like his, because this desire for others to see us highly is what essentially will lead to the sort of downfall from this sort of savage state, or this idealized savage state. And so what happens next? Well, next we move into civilization. And what happens with civilization? Well, with civilization, you have more complex social structures and you have more dependency on other types of people. The way our society and interactions and our social lives are set up is more hierarchical. And this sort of creates an environment where Amour-propre gets to thrive and bring out not so the greatest parts out of us, but at the same time help us towards advancement against more and other sorts of technologies. And this is where we first start to see the significant differences in sort of inequality and a huge downfall from this sort of savage-like state. Then we finally have the introduction of the state. And the state helps protect things like property and is sort of established by the rich in a seemingly fair type of way, while also legitimizing pre-existing inequalities that were created, especially in that earlier state of this proto-history, the civilization sort of stage. And the issue with this is that it sort of leads to a relationship of the master and the slave. And therefore, at the end of this proto-history, the cycle of inequality is complete. The reason why I came out here is so I can have a sort of realistic feel about what the world must have been like for a lot of these earlier humans in this hypothetical history laid out by Rousseau. So oftentimes in these modern days, we're completely normal, completely, I should say, numb to this idea of civilization. The fact that there are tall buildings, roads, sidewalks, and concrete everywhere that I go. It's a relatively new concept in human history. To simply be out here is to get a little bit of a taste of what life must have been like for most of our human ancestors, especially these noble savage types. And so this proto-history sort of lays out a type of history or a timeline that goes from the states of what we call or idealize as the noble savage all the way until what we have today as modern people, whatever exactly we are. And so what exactly is the noble savage? Well, it's pretty much a romanticized version of what humans are when we are uncorrupted by civilization. And this sort of emergence of amour-propre, the desire for glory and for others to see us highly, and how it's been corrupted through the advancements of technologies and societies from a sort of state of nature all the way to civilization and a state is sort of it's kind of like the whole point of the story. In a weird way, I feel like it's more than that. It's sort of, if you just look at the way that modern humans, or not even modern humans, but humans living under the sort of most advanced stage of this proto-history, where you have the slave and the master, it's sort of, I don't know how to explain it. It's that relationship is sort of, there's something like fundamentally wrong there, right? To be someone who is not a slave of anyone, sort of dynamic where you are either the slave or the ruler. In a way, while the sort of legitimacy of this worldview is questionable in some sort of manner, I do think it is admirable, and I do understand this sort of view of social dynamics and hierarchical structures of modern day times. It is sort of something interesting to look at and to really wonder and think about. Because me personally, I come from a culture society that in a lot of ways embodies these sorts of ideals. Because, like I said to you guys earlier, where the characteristics of the Nilotic peoples were absolutely hate dominance, or absolutely hate authority, and extremely prideful and ethnocentric, and we admire people who can defend themselves. This is sort of typical of pastoral type of societies. And so, but at the end of the day, it does sort of there's pros and cons, right, to living in different types of societies, where would you want to be a sort of Chad nomad, like pastoral herder who has this sort of view, or would you rather be living in a place like America where we go to work, we all work jobs that we don't like, we hate our lives, the 9-to-5 grind, you have phones and technology and etc. It is something to really think about, especially in reference to your own life. And definitely it will be something that I will explore in sort of the next few videos that I make on this type of topic, exploring whether civilization actually is better, because I see a lot of people talk about history especially in African history spaces where the civilization is sort of the highlight, you know, what African history is. And I I disagree with that, because for one, the majority of people weren't civilized people, it just wasn't the case. But number two, it really shows you the sort of value that people have, you know, how they value different types of cultures and societies. Does a civilized one, does a more advanced life automatically mean it is a better one? In a lot of ways, yes. In a lot of ways, no. It's a more noble life, a more advanced one. I think that's something that you would have to sort of wrestle with yourself, that I'm definitely would have to wrestle with myself and sort of ponder about, you know? But yeah, anyways, if you enjoyed this video, you found it interesting, definitely hit the like button, subscribe button. If you want to watch videos from a guy who's sort of weirdly into history, but also self-improvement and, you know, improving all parts of your life and etc. like that, definitely hit the subscribe button. I'm gonna have more videos like this. Hit the first link in the description. There we have our social media platform. It's pretty much meant for those interested in history, health, science, genetics, and anthropology. So all of that good stuff is going to be there. I'm sort of planning on making it like a full social media app, but also a research app, so with a bunch of AI tools and etc. So definitely stay tuned for that. If you're also interested in anything else, we have the Discord server, also will be down there. And with that being said, peace. What exactly is the state of nature that we're talking about? Of a savage. Retake.